rested well. So, good morning. This is Body-Culinary, aka Kwasapeacefull Eating, personal chef, personal trainer, lover of a natural lifestyle, or as close as I can get to it in these times and environment that we're living in. And today, this is usually the time of our 5 a.m. workout. Shout out to all of you early risers. This morning, I thought I would come on with some coaching conversation and an invitation to self-reflection and to consider why many of us will likely go through yet another cycle or another year and not reach our personal, tangible health and fitness goals. Why another 365 days will go by and we'll likely will not reach our goals, tangible goals in terms of permanent reduction of unhealthy adipose tissue or body fat, why we will not um, see consistency in our body composition, right? Where we're leveling down and getting our blood sugar down to healthy levels and our blood sugar down to healthy levels. Why we may not be able to really come off the medication as many of us say that we would like to. And this is not to be negative, but this is an invitation for self-reflection and your quiet personal spaces, because I'm not there with you. This is an invitation to self-reflection. And self-reflection is key because in today's environment, we're not encouraged to self-reflect. There is so much noise that we might not even consider noise, right? It's all today. It's entertainment, 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 entertainment. We don't consider it as noise. And context is everything. So the context of noise in terms of interference, disturbance, or distraction, and distraction from what? Distraction from our own divine, onboard, innate intelligence. Divine in the most practical sense, in that we were all born with an innate intelligence. Now, at the same time, we are definitely animals. We are definitely animals, and that can be observed if we look at our patterns as humans, our responses to fear, our responses to trauma, when we are triggered, our responses to CPTSD and PTSD, or a post-traumatic stress disorder, right? How we go haywire, and how we will put ourselves, our sacred reproductive organs, in harm's way um, without really thinking deeply, bring forth other humans non-intentionally without proper preparation for ourselves or even for these next human beings. It can be observed that we have behaviors where we're not thinking very deeply long term about the consequences. This is reflected in the fact that alone in the American population, over 70% of the population is unhealthfully overweight, carrying unhealthful amounts of adipose tissue, right? Distinction from we can dress nicely and we can be creative with fashion. The distinction is the numbers or the indicators of ill health, the indicators that we will likely have complications, heart attack, stroke, experience dementia, which is officially type 3, diabetes, which is an extension of type 2, diabetes, which is lifestyle, type 1 you were born with. This can be reflected, right? There are some benchmarks. There are some ways that we can tell how we are tracking as a species on the planet. And, you know, with all the education and putting people on the moon, we can see that we are also animals, and that in certain circumstances, we have demonstrated that we will give way to very base level behaviors, right? Without thinking of the consequences to our own body temples, our health, the health of children, the health of the planet, right? It's a humbling thing to admit and come to terms with the part of us that is animals, and that can be triggered, manipulated, enticed to deviancy, to deviant behaviors, right? I'm not making this up. This is something that can be reflected. It's humbling to admit these things. It's also equally humbling to recognize and admit addiction. And addiction is something that I personally have been fascinated by, because addiction has greatly impacted my life, the life of my community, my immediate community, my extended family, and the human community at large. So I've been someone that's been fascinated by addiction, and just by our tendency as a species to put ourselves in harm's way and also to mistreat each other and then children and the planet. Like, I wondered as a child, why do we do the things that we do? Because I know no one does something without a reason. So I'm very curious, and have always been very curious about the process and what is the mental process, right? What is the mental process of those that are self-actualized, able to really express uh, their creativity, that don't have the fear or the inhibition around creating something new, whether that be a business or a dance, something creative, as well as those people that have a mental focus and the capacity to be self-actualized in terms of athletics, in terms of business, who have the focus and the energy and the enthusiasm to study areas that they're interested in without the distraction of trauma or the feelings of I'm not worth it, or a whole mindset that has us not even make the effort, or we're not we don't have access to the type of focus to overcome trauma and distraction, right? And where does this lead? How is this manifesting? Well, I think we can see it, which we're going to discuss this morning, and some of the bypasses. Again, addiction is one of the biggest ones. And when I say addiction, I'm speaking specifically to narcotics. I'm speaking specifically to alcohol. This is one woman's experience. Alcohol, substances masquerading as food that are highly flavored, and how it is justified, right? Without making us bad or wrong, I invite us to press pause on the condemnation judgment and to perhaps trade that in for common sense judgment in order to be able to accurately assess and effectively assess. If you cannot really uh, break down and assess effectively a problem or acknowledge a problem, then it is highly unlikely that we'll be able to come up with an effective, efficient, sustainable solution. So I always like to think of what is missing in this picture. What is it that we're not comprehending, acknowledging, or understanding that leaves us smack right where we are, and likely come 2025, we will likely be in the same place, looking as voyeurs onto the internet, perhaps living vicariously and hopeful for political figures, religious figures, or celebrities, living our lives while we're eating snacks through the imagery that's being blasted on these screens. It seems like we've become pretty effective voyeurs if we look at the amount of time, if you have any trackers on your devices that give you, in your quiet moments by yourself, feedback on how much time you're spending on the screen. I know I use them, and sometimes I'm just shocked by how easily, I'm humbled by how easily we're sucked into these devices, and the just amount of pure distraction. Although we can say it's entertaining and funny, I saw some things that were funny online, but you can just get sucked in and have absolutely no concept of an hour gone by and half an hour gone by. Um, and I was discussing with my sister yesterday. She was saying she didn't have time for something that was a simple task, and I was like, that's actually not true. So our ego doesn't allow us to assess ourselves honestly. I said, that's actually not true, right? I was like, there's a lot of time, often spent in busy work, right? Frustrating, but not a lot is coming out. But we feel like we're doing more, but it's a lot of busy work, or lending our ear to folks who are frustrated and anxious and scared about their current state, though who are not committed in action to change, who are not willing to make an investment in their time, in their money, who are not willing to get uncomfortable, who are so comfortable, and this can be all of us to varying degrees, who are so comfortable with the story, which may be a valid story that we're telling ourselves about what happened to us, are so comfortable that we won't venture out to something new. We won't invest in new learning, new coaching, getting sweaty, sweating out our hairstyle. Like some of these things could be easily resolved, but it's a whole mindset and it's a whole mentality that doesn't give us access. And it's a powerful, we say program, I would even invite you to consider conditioning. Our conditioning is so strong, so deeply tried or connected to trauma that I think that we really underestimate the trauma we've been exposed to, um, just how much unprocessed uh, trauma we have. Because you heard a common term today, I did the work, I did the work. Maybe we've taken some, which is not something to discount. We've taken some therapy, we've had some counseling. And so, I remember me saying years ago, I did the work, right? You think I did, I started to explore some things. But we can see, and perhaps we'll never be perfect, but we can see when we're triggered that there's so much that still hasn't been resolved. And I would say the litmus test is if we're still putting ourselves in harm's way. So, what are some things that we can take a look at or perhaps reflect on that could be deterrents, bypasses, right? That make it seem like we're doing something, but it's a lot of busy mental work, but doesn't necessarily lend itself to transformation. And distinctions, I love distinctions because they can make a difference, right? So here are some areas that we could be potentially using as a bypass, and it's culturally acceptable in popular internet culture. We have um, food porn. I can tell you as a chef and somebody that's been a junk food junkie. We have fitness porn. We have tarot porn, astrology porn, religious porn, and spiritual porn. Now, many of these things are ways that humans express and that we strive to find meaning. So how could they be porn? Well, similar to affirmations, was the thing, and affirmations is still trending right now. And as someone that's been an avid goer to ashrams and affirming and keeping years of journals, I remember being horrified to look at some journals that I really kept journals for decades. And I remember being horrified once pulling some of the journals off the shelf and reading some of the journals. I'm like, oh my gosh, feeling like, in a sense, even though I have learned and accomplished, in a certain sense, I'm in the same place that I was decades ago, right? The undertone of the conversation, some of the same anxieties and fears was still there. Even though I have more information, more clothes, more experiences, I could detect, I could observe, but there's still a pattern that still seems to be there, right? I also can remember years ago as a young woman really making a conscientious effort to do things very, very, very differently, from the food that I ate, the way I chose to parent, um, names, hair, so much deciding to do it differently. All of those things I think were very intentional and impactful. But then to still see some patterns emerge that was still very similar. I remember as a young woman thinking like, how could it be if I'm choosing to be vegan or vegetarian, as one example, how could you still be overweight? How is that possible, right? So that told me many years ago not to just trip off of the label of vegan or vegetarian, right? You could be leaving all of the flesh out, but still, as we see today with a lot of vegan products, every mushroom has to be like a steak with blood in it, which I think is a mentality, right? Every mushroom or piece of cauliflower um, has to resemble a chicken wing so deeply, where people are constructing pieces of vegetables to have the texture and feel of an actual bone in it. So I think these are two simple examples of how the mentality doesn't change, right? We're changing a lot of the form or the substance, yet the feel is still the same, right? Today we have so much expression, and I'm not anti-makeup, though we have so much ability to buy more and more products and more clothes, more than we can ever wear in 365 days, and so many forms of outward expression if we're bored or we're feeling lonely. Yet we can see the undertone, something hasn't changed. If anything, it has continued to shift, maybe perhaps in downward, a downward, a downward direction, right? In terms of, let's see if we can use a litmus test, right? So we can feel the undertone, right? One of the ways we can benchmark or we can litmus test this is if we look at the amount of the adult and young adult population now that it's common knowledge is on pills for mood, not to make it bad or wrong, right? There are so many pills, mind altering, mood altering pills that are being prescribed to improve people's mood. And those medications and the dosages constantly have to be shifted to bigger doses, lesser doses to elicit a mood, right? To have us secrete different types of chemicals inside the brain to alter our mood. Yet our screen time and the things that are stimulating different sorts of types of mood is up, is dramatically up, right? Again, if we look at these trackers on our screen time, and it's not being acknowledged with the same amount of prioritizing of us medicating ourselves. It's not being prioritized as individuals, as responsible for ourselves and our lives, individuals, really acknowledging how deeply and how chemically the entertainment that we're watching is affecting the brain, right? Chemically and physiologically, and how it could be, even though we're laughing and eating more snacks, how it could be really sparking and triggering the six basic human fears, right? Those fears being fear of old age, fear of death, fear of loss of love and never finding love, fear of poverty, old age, and fear of criticism, right? Fear of criticism, fear of failure, right? So these basic human fears that it levels the playing field for all human beings is being triggered by the entertainment. So isn't it interesting that so much focus is being put on more philosophies, right? And more sitting and affirming and saying, I have more money and more money is coming to me. Yet we can look and see, or there are more quote unquote millionaires. There are droves by the thousands of people who seek to sedate. We're being seduced and triggered to sedate ourselves with chemicals, um, some more intense than others, and drugs, right? Well, now it's legal for us to sedate ourselves. So it's becoming more and more common, similar to the opium wars. We have whole populations numbing out as a coping mechanism, right? As a coping mechanism, which does not resolve the trauma. Everybody's doing, or what's trending is cacao ceremonies, ayahuasca. I've had numerous people recommend ayahuasca. And I think what's interesting, the age groups, I mean, I see all different age groups, so some of the age groups that are recommending this and different psychedelics and different things, I don't see that they have effectively um, processed their trauma. I don't see emotional or physical discipline with being protective of reproductive organs. I don't see a whole lot of life experience with processed wisdom, even being long enough on the planet to make certain distinctions. Um, and also, one of the basic things is putting the pattern of continuing to put ourselves in harm's way, at least refraining from putting ourselves in harm's way. Yet, as humans, we give poorly vetted advice, and we accept unvetted advice, and we give poor advice. That's another one of the habits that we have. So these bypasses, the spiritual porn, we've got lots of rituals. We've got bindis, we've got chanting. Like, I love chanting. It feels good. I'm sure just like a meditation, it relaxes the brain. But once you're done chanting, you get up. If we still haven't processed the trauma, they become bypasses, right? Definitely, religious porn, as someone that was raised very religious, just a matter of time. All of this stuff that's being exposed by about religious leaders, sometimes you have to wonder how much more information, how much more confirmation do we need that we have um, entertaining personalities that cherry pick religious books and we just follow them blindly, right? What is the responsibility of the individual for who and what we are following? And do we have the results to show for what we're following, right? I know as a young person, I used to ask my mom, well, if the pastor, is cheating on his wife, and you have all this ill behavior and backbiting and people doing things to each other, I ask very respectfully, then what is it that you get out of still going to these quote unquote houses of worship? And I get part of it is cultural, it's very familiar, the so-called fellowship, even if that's being able to sing together and say some verses that everybody has the same book for comfort, right? For some type of companionship, at least for a while until the church service is over. But I never saw it pan out in terms of basic health, communication skills, and economic wealth for the vast amount of the congregation. I never saw it add up. So I could see the patterns of it's not effective at having people or giving people tools to really be able to effectively process trauma, serious trauma, right? Other than make us feel good and give us blind hope. I never saw the resolve, the permanent, sustainable results as a consistent pattern. And so now in popular times, we've traded off the religion for astrology, more philosophy, not necessarily grounded in reality, more philosophy, and more rituals and more, things without outward appearance. And it's not translating in character. And even with those folks with lots of money and even in positions of authority, it doesn't translate in terms of character. So all these bypasses, it's easy to be enticed into these bypasses. At what point in our quiet moments do we acknowledge um, the burnout, right? That we're tired of not having specific sustainable results. We keep following more leaders and online personalities and religious um, personalities, and sometimes just downright clowns because they're funny or because they got body or they've got gift of gab. At what point do we sit back and realize that we're burnt out from being so performative and so heavily curated on social media, right? To the point where a lot of the being performative and the presentation actually becomes a prison, right? Where you can't show, not only can you not show your real face, right? What you actually look like with all the shadows and the lighting. Um, Not only do you feel intimidated to show your real face, not only do we have young women and some young men in our 20s putting full body parts in men and women, right? To be so performative in front of these little boxes on the screens, drug use and overdosing is, the numbers are through the roof. Our blood sugar levels, right? Toxic glucose inside the blood is off the hinges. But the gorging on substances that are highly flavored, masquerading as nutrition, um, that train is not stopping. And I think we can also see by the number of people that still are attempting to fast. And somebody that's worked in a fasting center for several years, a nutritional fasting center, it's usually the healthy habits are usually not sustained. So it's really become like a binge purge. Again, it's like another type of porn. Even fasting and juicing has become like a type of porn. It's so exciting now. You know, it seems so healthy because now we have a lot more juice bars in different communities, and people excited and getting um, fantastic, you know, new technology juicers. Yet when we stop juicing, that trigger to self-soothe and medicate with foods, it still hasn't disappeared. So I'm always fascinated by what is missing, and at what point, you know, do we admit that we're just tired of the back and the forth? At some point, we get so exhausted, we just become complacent and say, this is the way it is. If my body's going to become unhealthily overweight, for my patterns of consumption, so be it. I'm not fighting it anymore. And we just go with the self sedation. We go with the self sedation. That's what's popular. That's the popular narrative. And it really takes something, it takes a type of personal courageousness to not follow the crowd and to use your own discernment and your own common sense. What's missing? What's missing in light of all of this porn, right? Um, the food addiction, sedation addiction, following others to avoid personal accountability or to avoid doing the hard things addiction, meth addiction. I can't even keep up with the different names for the mind, mood altering drugs that are being manufactured and presented to the masses, especially those that have experienced trauma, economic trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, being sacred parts from a young age being mishandled trauma. At what point do we courageously accept responsibility for what it is we're able to do to make ourselves feel better without toxically, dramatically altering our body parts and compromising our vitality, the vitality that we have left? At what point do we accept responsibility that, you know, bitters are part of life? And how interesting is it? Most of the substances that are really healing don't have a lot of tutti fruity flavors. They're usually bitter. The herbs or the healing nutrition that fortifies the body against viruses and flukes and a weak immune system, they're usually bitter herbs. And there are different degrees of bitterness. And those dark green foods that are not salted at all, that are usually sour and bitter, those are not really embraced on a regular basis as part of our repertoire. Our inability to take safe discomfort, accepting discomfort as part of the process of rebirth, of regeneration, of transformation. It seems that we don't have the mental capacity, or we haven't cultivated the mental capacity for what it takes, like the discomfort that it takes to change to something that actually feels good. Because again, in our quiet moments, although the food feels good, big food, it feels good going down, it does not feel good to be overstuffed and to be a prisoner in your body, to not be able to move. What does it do for us psychologically to know, right, in the back of our minds that at the rates that we're moving, we're likely going to lose our mobility earlier. We're more at risk for blindness. We're likely going to be less able to fend for ourselves and defend ourselves. We're likely going to be on a trajectory to pay for very expensive drugs and painkillers, right? So it seems a lot of us have just become complacent to this is just what it is, right? We're becoming increasingly comfortable to just merely be a voyeur through the screen of other people's lives. So I invite you today to consider 3 leverage lifestyle practices. So seemingly simple that many of us are still going to choose, well, it must be some secret formula. Give me the secret recipe. give me more powders, because this is what we've come to respect. We'd rather follow the diet plan of the latest celebrity or the latest clothes they have on or latest waist snatcher they have on than to get uncomfortable, because uncomfortable is it's uncomfortable. Um, Acknowledging how deconditioned our bodies have become, it can seem like overwhelming or insurmountable, and we think like, oh my gosh, what we will have to do to become conditioned enough to hold up our own body weight, to defend ourselves, to run and jump and to play. What it will take to uh, dramatically alter our body composition. Many of us think it's about doing without. We don't even want to acknowledge the fact that um, we're eating too much food, and we're eating too much recreational food, and then we're wondering why we have so much cellulite, which a lot of that extra tissue has inflammatory behavior inside the body. So all of this is a mindset, and a lot of the philosophies and the bypasses that are popular today, they don't necessarily render us in a mindset of accountability, of being accountable for, this is what I've done to my body. And yes, I've experienced trauma, but this is what I've done to my body. This is what I'm doing. Acknowledging if we're in a binge purge cycle with colonics or with different food fads, instead of finding what's, it can be much more challenging to find this is the amount of food that I need. I think perhaps it's one of the reasons why we're so resistant to quote unquote counting calories. Yeah, I can also tell you, somebody that's been in the fitness industry for years, most people that really experience, fitness competitions or certain physiques, they count their calories like a scientist, right? So they tell the rest of the population, you don't need to count your calories or to be very stringent and hyper aware of what you're eating. Yet that is how they have gotten the results that they have gotten. So this is not about getting on the stage and being an underwear model. This is about increasing, it should you so desire, increasing um, the likelihood that, and being very intentional about, should you so choose to, achieving some tangible results that are directly related to the 401k of your health and vitality. It is not likely that we will reach our goals if we cannot wrap our mind around what is required to become healthy and fit, what is required so I don't have to be on medication, what is required so I don't have to be uh, in a clinic having a procedure that's going to affect me mentally and emotionally that I didn't have to, right? What that requires, it takes some conscientiousness and being very intentional, and definitely not following the crowd. And it may seem like, oh, it's so boring or so tedious, yet right on the other side of that, I'm embracing that discomfort, holds so many surprises. It definitely has the capacity to be a solid foundation of esteem, right? A daily, so the 3 lifestyle practices, simple leverage lifestyle practices, a daily personal movement practice. Personally, you cater it towards yourself wherever you are in your life. Peaceful consumption, food that demonstrates that it loves you back. Food that is also reciprocal to the shopping cart of Mother Earth, where you're getting it from. We're putting it back so we have more food in the future. We're taking care of the planet. We're taking care of what is taking care of us. And garden/nature therapy, right, which has the capacity to trigger you into relaxation. If we're going to be triggered, right, that's part of how our psyche works. Then why not work with it? Why not admit, like, okay, we get triggered a lot. We have a lot of autopilot behaviors. So understanding that, this is one example, understanding that, and being honest about that. Well, how can I make that work for me? So the garden is an excellent place where we can see that we get triggered. We can have so much stress on the mind, but caring for these plants can trigger you not only into relaxation, but trigger you into a mindset of respecting the processes of life, reciprocation. You don't just plant the seed, but you have to come back and weed it and water it, and even then it goes through its cycles, usually about 4 months, in order for you to have something that you can actually eat. right? The care and the attention is required. So we're being offered a lot of solutions that not only cause 10 more problems, don't have us really tap into the common sense of understanding the process or the cycles of life. We're not involved in the cycles of life. So we have a lot of information, yet it's like we don't have any wisdom. So my grandpa used to say, like, so smart, you're stupid. And I used to wonder why he said things like that. But we have endless amounts of information and no wisdom. And how can we determine that? What's the litmus test? Just us putting ourselves, eating ourselves to the point of deformity, putting ourselves in harm's way. Our mental, our emotional, our finances, our vitality, our futures, we're putting them in harm's way. So, simplicity, there's so much to be said for simplicity. There's so much opportunities for gourmet food in the simplicity of the garden. There's so much opportunity for relaxation um, in simplicity, in consistency. Simple and consistent. Not necessarily perfect, but consistency. There is where the possibility for transformation lies. And if we don't take the time, big bypass, we think there's no time, but everybody has the same amount of time. If we had to do an accurate accounting, then we would have to account for the time wasters or um, poor investments of time that are not yielding us back enough for our investment. Without slowing down to really acknowledge this, we are continually making poor investments and doing a lot of busy work. And basically playing mind games with our own ego, which is supported in the narratives being served to us on um, social media, and lying to ourselves and lying to each other about just how fabulous we look on the outside and how great everything is, yet we have piss poor behavior. We're mistreating ourselves and each other. But we have lots of great clothes and we have lots of technology and game systems, yet it's not landing in human beings who feel fulfilled and safe and able to reciprocate to the planet and to each other, to treat each other well, and to make decisions that secure our home that we live on and securing a home to share with other people. So let me know what you think respectfully. Why is it likely? Is it likely that we won't shift or be able to reach the goals that we really desire inside for ourselves? And could it be possible that we just take these substitutes, these poor substitutes, because we become complacent, or we just don't want to get uncomfortable, so we'll just deal with being complacent rather than get uncomfortable, though that discomfort is where that's part of the process, right? Of where the transformation, the opportunities for transformation lie, right? So, have you considered why you will likely, like Groundhog Day, right? Just hauntingly wake up to, it's been a week, 2 weeks, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, and life is not standing still. The body's either progressing forward, it's always aging, even with the best care, it's going backwards, the things that we don't address, right? Not making a decision to address something is a decision. So things are decaying while we are deciding not to take action. But there's illusion as we put so much stuff on that it's staying the same. Let me know respectfully what your thoughts are. Hopefully, I will see you in the morning for a 5 a.m. workout. So the 5 a.m. workout is consistent, though it is, I think, a balance to the workout is not just the physical, right? And just showing how much weight we can lift or how much we can push inside of a machine, which a lot of times can actually be ego driven and can open us up to injury, right? Just working out only from the ego, not listening to the body, not respecting the process or the fact that we become or allowed ourselves to become deconditioned, um, not acknowledging that even after we achieve a certain result, it will take just as much work to continue to make progress if we want to be healthy and vital until our hair is white and until we exit the planet. So a daily personal movement practice, peaceful consumption, aka food that loves you back, and garden/nature therapy. These are lifestyle practices that we have access to. Part of that 5 a.m. workout, a big part of it is the mentality and the mindset. You cannot become healthy and fit without becoming healthy and fit. And some of these conversations, there are a lot of conversations that I don't um, hear being had. And I think it's one of the reasons why we will continually, another year, it is likely we will continue to be on the whole stroll of the latest diet and the latest fad. Whatever is driving us to that meth addiction, cocaine addiction, crack addiction, weed addiction, beer addiction, cheap liquor addiction, corn um, addiction, putting our reproductive organs in harm's way, addiction, the addiction to coming online to rant and rave and blame other people rather than to get into action and to develop skills, marketable skills, communication skills, conflict resolution skills. That all requires a whole other level of a workout. And this part cannot be rectified by protein powders, BCAAs, and creatine. But the quiet of the garden goes a long way. Um, Making the personal agreement with your own essence to no longer put yourself in harm's way. Nurturing some plants go a long way. So I invite you to create a great day on purpose. Feel free to share along in the journey of this lifestyle, not a diet, of daily movement, peaceful consumption, food that loves you back, and garden/nature therapy. And I'd love to hear about your progress. You can find Body Culinary on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and all that jazz. Create a great day on purpose. And sending a shout out to my YouTube family. Again, just taking a pause this morning to consider why, and this may be an uncomfortable conversation, why we won't hit our goals. And that can be any of us, myself included. I like to stay humble because we are a type of animal. And as somebody that has studied junkies and addiction, that has watched a lot of my family and community lives greatly compromised or lives totally expired um, because of not having the tools or the mental access to understanding how to effectively and efficiently process trauma, right? Bad advice, ill-informed advice, um, habits that we share with others, lack of discipline, and a lot of fantasy around those bypasses, the spiritual and religious and tarot porn, astrology porn, food porn, even fitness porn, but still not resolving the issues. Now, fitness is key, but that is, it's not everything. Food, real food is key, but it's not everything. All of these tools in the toolbox, especially once you implement these tools on a regular basis, they give you more access. You can take more off the table when you take away a lot of the distraction, and you have more access to tuning into your own divine onboard intelligence, so that you have the space to take action, to get into action around the things that are likely going to be uncomfortable, to address a lot of the looping, conditioning, and patterns you have going on. But there is such an opportunity to cultivate a solid foundation of esteem. There's so much space to take a lot off the table, to take a lot, you get to just get to another level, to take blaming people. Not that you're removing accountability off of people, but the personal accountability you take for your life. Oh my gosh. It seems so challenging, but it frees up so much space. To take hair off the table, not be worried about hair. To take food off the table. Okay, I eat fresh food. I don't put toxic things in my body anymore. You can take so much more off the table to make dramatic progress. So you can really get to a space to, in a space that's something that you're able to manage and handle, right? To process your own trauma. So you can put these chapters on the shelf to access them only as you need them and to write new chapters for your life and your time in your human suit. Inviting you to create a great day on purpose. It takes courage to get quiet and to really be compassionate, yet firm and honest with yourself why you likely will not reach your goals. It is no joke to acknowledge the self-sabotage and the undertones, what's feeding it. It usually will require some quiet time. Create a great day on purpose. Send you positive vibrations from Bangladesh. Also, create a great day. Like, comment respectfully, and subscribe.